In this video, I want to dive into a conversation about making the visual customizations to your FileMaker custom application. That's kind of a mouthful. Basically, what we're talking about is changing this screen of information that you see here. So in a previous video, we talked about the different modes of FileMaker. You can go here to View, and you can see that we have Browse, Find, and Layout modes, which are by far the three most common ones that you'll use probably quite a bit. Now, I'm going to go ahead and select Layout mode this one time. Going forward, I'm going to use the keyboard shortcuts. So of course, I can go Command B or Control B, which puts me into Browse mode, and then I can go Command or Control L, which puts me into Layout mode. You can also exit Layout mode right here, and then edit Layout mode right here is the button. So there's a keyboard shortcut, there's a button here, and there's also the View menu at the top of the screen. Now I'm also looking at the ruler right here, so I'm going to go up here and I'm going to turn off the ruler. That'll clean things up a little bit. And so we have the area across the top, which is called the status toolbar. And then on the right side, we have what they call the inspector pane. And then we also then have the object pane over here on the left. And the style of this is very similar to what we see with the script workspace and frankly, the calculation dialog. This is all modeled after other Apple products that are in market. And really what this is in terms of naming consistency would be a layout workspace. FileMaker still calls it layout mode, but really there is a script workspace, there's a calculation dialog or a calculation workspace, and this is really kind of a layout workspace. So what's cool about this is that up here in the top right corner, we can hide or show the panes, and so this is what you get right here. Now, of course, the behavior that you're seeing here as I jump back and forth between browse mode and layout mode is that the screen automatically kind of spins and spawns and gets bigger. So from a visual perspective, it's really obvious that you're in layout mode as opposed to being in browse mode. Now, something else that FileMaker has also done, of course, in browse mode, you can add records in here, and then you can actually flip through the records up here with the scroll control. This analogy exists in layout mode as well. So if I go to layout mode, it should be right here, but starting with FileMaker 17, they've opted to hide that from you by default. So FileMaker is kind of wrestling a little bit here with trying to communicate with people that they're in layout mode. And when people would see this, they would think that they're flipping records. But when you're in layout mode, you would be flipping layouts because you have this pop-up here of the layouts, but you could also flip through the layout sequentially up here. So I prefer to actually have this on. It's consistent with, frankly, all the videos that we've shot over the years. And so I'm not in a big hurry to dump this right here. What I'm going to go ahead and do is show you something I've not done before, is how to customize this status toolbar up here. So I can go to View, down to Customize Toolbar. Now this shows you all the tools that you have access to, all the things you could put up there. So you see that this is kind of the default set that they put up there. Really, this is the piece that should be up there as well. And you can see that you can move it around different positions and add other buttons that maybe do other things. Technically, you could even remove this right here. And so you couldn't turn the panes on or off. I'm not sure what that gets you other than maybe more confusion by people. And I'm going to go ahead and hit done. And so this layout mode right here will be very comfortable for people who have been using FileMaker previous to the 17 release. If you're using it for the first time, then whether you want to put this up here or not is up to you. But flipping this scroll control right here flips layouts when you're in layout mode. If you're in browse mode, I'm going to hit the keyboard shortcut, Command or Control B, and then that scroll control now flips records. So I could have Fred over here, and then I could have Sally over here, Tom, Dana, right? So you get the idea. So the idea is that you can flip through records here and you can see the records flipping. So understand that the status toolbar is up here at the top. This is a little optional bar that you can pop up. It's a formatting bar, allows you to format the fonts and things of a piece of text. That can be on or off. So starting at the top real quick, I'm just going to buzz through the tools. We've kind of discussed this a little bit. We've discussed the formatting bar here. Of course, we have the ability to pop and change to a specific layout. So you can either navigate to them here by flipping through them sequentially. You can see there's 15 layouts, or I could try to pick it specifically and target it and bring it up that way. It's another way. If you want to edit the setup of a layout, you press this button right here, and this brings up the layout setup dialog. This allows you to name the layout, to confirm it's attached to a specific table occurrence. We'll get into tables and relationships more as we go forward, but it just helps you set up the settings to this specific layout. Also, there are script triggers. Script triggers are like little spots as you step across or you type into a field or you navigate in a specific way. You can activate scripts in your FileMaker solution. So this is where we would set layout specific triggers. So like when we enter this layout, it always does something. Or if we exit this layout, it always does something. The script triggers provide a lot of flexibility. This menu item right here, I can move it over a little bit so you can read it. And this allows you to jump into managing the database, schema, the security setup, looking at the script workspace, etc., all the critical areas that you might want to get into. Normally I get to that by coming over here to File, down to Manage, then I access it this way. There are a couple keyboard shortcuts here that you might want to memorize. Command-Shift-D is a really good one. That allows me to get into the schema of the file, the tables of the file, the relationships, if there are any relationships in here, that kind of thing. I'm going to go and discard the changes. Also, there is the Command-Shift-S, which is your script workspace. And you'll notice once again that structurally it has the same kind of idea. You've got some things across the top. You've got a pane on the right and a pane on the left, and the stuff you're working on is kind of in the middle, right? Pretty cool stuff. So that's this model that was really put forward by Apple in some of its development tools. And FileMaker has mimicked this because it makes a lot of sense. So this is called the script workspace. I think maybe eventually they might call this the layout workspace, but you get the idea. So running across the top, the buttons are pretty straightforward. This is your pointer tool. This is what we're running around with. Of course, the text tool allows you to put text on a screen or edit a text on the screen. A line tool, very simple, drawing lines. So a lot of these are going to be basic geometric shapes, which you can use to build a lot of different things. Those are pretty straightforward. This allows you to drop a field on the layout, and then you can select the field you want. That's kind of the way we do this normally, but with the panel attached on the left, you can now dig through the field you want, and then if you want to add the field, you can add it right here. You can pick the type of field. Once again, that gets into some other things that we can talk about. The object window tree, of course, I love a lot. We use a lot of things on here. So once again, FileMaker provides these tools, and a lot of these tools allow you to do the same thing different ways. So to drop a field on a layout in a different way. But obviously, I think these panes over here are very slick and help move things along very rapidly. This is the button tool. Allows you to put a button on screen so you can tell it to print this or sort this or do something like that. That's an individual button. The item below it is a popover window. And so this is going to give you a window that will pop up to give you extra information. A very cool tool. But basically, if you press the button, it pops this up and gives you more information. Really super cool feature. Here we have a button bar. We see this in a lot of places like FM Starting Point, but even in this solution, I believe this is a button bar right here. Right, so this is actually a button bar. If I double click it, yeah, it's a button bar. So it's multiple buttons that are kind of glued together, if that makes sense. That's a button bar. It has some other really interesting properties, but I'm a big fan of that. The next tool is the tab tool. Tab tool is going to be where you're on the same layout, but you're tabbing through different bits of information. The slide control option is the other option right here. The slide control is kind of like what you see on a lot of websites where the content kind of magically flips and animates. And so this allows you to have different content, and then you can use a script to move back and forth or click on the round little dots to indicate where you want to go or maybe where you're at. Pretty cool stuff. The next item over is, of course, going to be your portal. And this is going to show you basically related records from another table occurrence. Next one is charting. This is a web viewer, which allows you to have a little web browser in your page. Super valuable, super useful. I have this field option right here, which is interesting because, once again, it's solving a problem in a similar but different way. If I want to add a field and I want to grab this field and drag it over here, I can drag this field over here, right? See how that works? So that's one way of adding a field. And of course, I'm making a mess out of this, so I'm going to undo that. In fact, what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to use my tool here to kind of clean this out a little bit to make it simpler. So we can drag it on that way. We can select it here, right? We have to select the kind of field we want first. And then we put it on here, and then it says select it from the list. So that's kind of the old school way. And then the third way of doing it is actually grabbing it right here and dragging it on. So this, you grab, drag on, and then you select the item. So the difference is this button here allows you to specify the control style as you put the field on the screen. The control style is basically this option of having a edit box or a radio button or a check box or maybe even a little calendar. Or maybe a secret field where you type into it and it just puts dots because it's supposed to be like a password, for example. So these are called control styles. So this allows you to specify the control style, then drop the field on the layout. This allows you to drag it on the layout. This allows you to drag it on the layout. Largely, these three things are all pretty much equivalent. You're doing the same thing, only in a slightly different method. So don't freak out. Just pick one that you really like and just use it. I'm still getting used to using the new Pane feature over here. I'm inclined to probably find the things over here. And of course, we can do a search right here and do a search for a phone, which is super. See how awesome that is? I think this is my personal favorite. These are useful, but if I want to find the phone field over here, there's no way of doing a search and finding the phone, right? So this is kind of the old style, old school method. This is the new super duper amazing method. And then if I want to put the phone, I just drag it on there. So there are somewhat redundant methods to working with FileMaker. There are literally hundreds of thousands of people around the world who use FileMaker and who have learned these techniques with the older tools. So a lot of the tools are in here so they can still feel comfortable. But if you have the chance to grow yourself, learn the new capabilities and use some of the new items, especially the field picker built into the left side pane in layout mode. Very cool. I'm going to go ahead and clear these items off here real quick because I am making a bit of a mess. I'm going to go ahead and select my pointer tool and delete that. Lastly, up here at the top is the Format Painter tool. This looks like you would be putting paint or a fill color or something like that. This isn't Photoshop. That's what you would get with Photoshop. What this tool allows you to do is say that I have an object here, and the object is red with italics and bold and underline and all sorts of crazy things in it. And say that I wanted to put that in other places, but I didn't want to like select everything to do it. So what you can do is you can select an item, click on the Format Painter tool like that, and then as you specify an item, then it applies those same styles to that item, right? See how that works? Pretty cool. So that's how the Format Painter tool works. This is a good tool to play with as you're a novice in FileMaker. There are some downsides to this in terms of potential performance issues. If you're a more experienced FileMaker developer or you're building a solution that's going to be shared over the internet, maybe go easy on the Format Painter tool, or at least check out the videos we have later on in this course about custom themes and shared styles. That's a whole nother conversation. And of course, we're just at the beginning here right now. So we've covered the status toolbar at the top. This dark bar right below it, this is called the layout bar. So I've already mentioned that this contains a list of the layouts that you can see and jump to. You can edit the layout settings here. And then on the right side, we see the theme. Themes are basically a visual style that, as you can see, can give your layout some visual consistency. There's a whole variety of these in here. Some of these are actually optimized for mobile devices. For example, the ones that say touch on them have oversized fields, oversized buttons, things that are important to building an interface on a mobile device. We have a totally separate video course that discusses user interface issues and mobile devices. Then, of course, next to that, we have the stencils. The stencils are effectively ways of putting little lines in here to show you what an iPhone might look like on a layout, how much size and space it might have, or maybe an iPad, right? So you see the little yellow indicators here. That's the screen space that an iPad or an iPhone might use. Of course, you can specify that it's landscape or portrait, etc. And you can provide it a custom size. Say you're wrestling with the interface on a particular Android device and you're building a WebDirect layout for that. You could put the custom size in there. Lastly, the button here on the right is going to turn on or off the formatting bar. So the layout bar, the formatting bar, and the formatting bar is all the things you would expect to see in a basic text editing application like Microsoft Word. So you can select your fonts, your styles, your point size, obviously some basic styling, etc. You can also select on an object and maybe specify that there is a fill color. Maybe I'm going to make the fill color like that. You get the idea. And of course, you can make it transparent, which is the little white box right here with a red slash to it, or you could make it white, for example. And of course, right next to this is the line that runs around the outside. So you could make it that way. You give it like a 3-point line. It runs around the outside. And then, of course, your line has to have a color, so we could make it like that. So you could make some pretty whacked out user interfaces by choosing random colors. So as a designer, you're going to learn these tools, but at the same time, you're going to want to maybe resist using all these at the same time, because turning on all these options over here can be a little visually overwhelming to your users. So that wraps up a brief overview of the layout document window here, or what I would call the layout workspace. In the next videos, we're going to continue diving into these features in more detail.